Let's start. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for being here with us today on this EdTech info session. I am Lucy Millicent. I'm a project manager in Funding Box, which is a partner in the Impact EdTech project. And today we have this great panel of experts in education, and we'll be talking about the challenges of remote learning, which is very of actuality due to the current schools lockdown and COVID crisis and the switch that had to be done from face-to-face teaching to 100% online teaching. So our goal today is to identify some of the challenges, but also to find out solutions that can be implemented. First, I will quickly introduce the Impact EdTech project, and then I will let each panelist to introduce themselves. Then we'll start the panel discussion, which I will moderate. And I would like to let all our audience know they can also use the questions tool on your GoToWebinar dashboard. And our project coordinator, who's here today, Adina Nister, she will be selecting the questions and asking them to the relevant panelists. So just if we can go to the next slide, Maria. Okay. So just a quick introduction. Impact EdTech project. It's a European-funded project of 3 partners. It's coordinated by European Schoolnet, who are based in Brussels. They're a network of education ministries in Europe. Then we have ESD Accelerator. Actually, one of our panelists, Dionys, is the director of ESD. They're specialists in acceleration methodology for startups, and then Funding Box, which I work in, and we're specialized in open call management and cascade funding. So in Impact EdTech, what we will do is that we will help 42 European startups, EdTech startups, to bring their digital learning solution to the market. So we're asking for a promising prototype, so technology readiness level of 5 to 7, so quite early stage. And we will offer financial support and an incubation and acceleration program. And the aim is at the end of the program, the startups have a viable product which they can commercialize in the market. Just to give you quickly a view on the calendar. So the current call is open until the end of the month. There will be a jury day, which was planned in Madrid, but it's actually going to be online or on September 2nd. And then the selected companies will enter stage 1, which will be the incubation program, so redefining their MVP and yes, testing it. And the stage 2 is actually the acceleration program, which will link pilot pathways in schools or with learners, with individual learners. And this will be from February next year until June next year. Yes. So if you want more information about the project, you can check our website, impactedtech.eu. You will see there's a direct link to the application form, but it's impactedtech.fundingbox.com. We also have a community. You also have the link on the application page, a community in which you can ask your questions. If you don't want to ask your questions publicly and you contact us privately, you can do so through that impactedtech.eu. And this is the application page in which you can find the guide for applicants and the frequently questions. Also, if you have more questions about the current open call, we have a webinar on the 5th, so it's next Monday at 12 CET. in which about who can apply, how to apply, etc., etc. But yes, in the meantime, we'll talk today more about what are the challenges to remote learning. Introduce themselves. Maybe I will start with Dionys. Can you tell us a bit more about you and your background?
Yeah, of course. First of all, I'm very sorry because my webcam. But anyway, thank you so much, Lucy, for this invitation. And it's my pleasure. I feel honored to be here today, sharing this time together with the rest of the panelists, Julia, Leticia, Thierry. Very nice meeting you guys. SD is one of the leading digital transformation business schools worldwide, with campus in Spain, but also in Mexico, in the States, and another one in Paris, France. And basically, our main target in terms of education is senior adults and senior professionals that somehow they're struggling in their employability because of the impact of digital transformation in most of the business. We do not only teach professionals coming from different industries and sectors, but we also cooperate and co-work closely with many different top companies worldwide in order to reskill their teams and especially their management committees to make them, as we like to say, digital proof and future proof via training. So I'm in charge of the campus based in Barcelona. And my role basically is not only as a teacher, but I'm also providing guidance in terms of employability and using and encouraging many tools coming from the learnability and the future thinking areas. So that's it. And thank you so much for the invitation again.
Thanks a lot, Dionys, for introduction. Leticia, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yes. First of all, hello, everybody. Thank you for this invitation and for this great opportunity. I'm privileged to be here today. Thank you very much. So I'm a researcher at INDIRE, which is the National Institute for Documentation, Innovation and Educational Research in Italy. So it's educational research of the Ministry of Education. So we work directly with the Ministry of Education, and we develop our own research areas, of course. And among different areas, we have innovation at school. So one of our main mission is to help to guide teachers and school leaders in embracing innovation and spreading innovation, so transforming the traditional way of schooling. We also have an online university, which is called UL, which is co-funded by INDIRE and University of Florence, and I'm a professor of English there because I'm a linguist. Among all of my research areas, I'm a linguist, and I deal with language learning and CLIL, with digital, with technologies in general.
I'm afraid we're having some
Sorry,
problems.
my microphone was off.
Okay.
Yeah, Julia? Thank you.
So hello to everyone. Thank you again for the invitation, also on my side. I'm a teacher, a science teacher, and also I teach technologies at the Liceo STEAM International in Rovereto, near Trento, and Bologna in Italy. I'm also Scientix ambassador. So I'm very fond of everything that is connected with science and with technology. I'm also teacher trainer. It's since more than 10 years that I'm using educational robotics and technology in general in my teaching. And what else? We will see later. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Julia and Thierry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So I'm Thierry Vipierre, CEO and co-founder of EvidenceB. So it's a EdTech startup. And we'll talk about this kind of companies today. EvidenceB, in a nutshell, what we do is we tackle K-12 curriculum. We are doing module in math, language, traditional, I would say, curriculum, but bring on board 3 innovations. First of all, we develop those software based on cognitive science, how the brain learns math, proportion or sense of number, grammatics. Behind that, we have an AI engine to personalize the learning for every kid, and we do that in a gamified interface to be engaging for the kids. So it's a very adaptive learning, and we sell that to Ministry of Education or school publisher mostly. And here I am representing the EdTech industry in a way. I'm vice president of AFINEF, I'm member of EdTech France. So those cluster of EdTech, member of Educate, a cluster of EdTech in UK. EdTech France is obviously in France, and I am the representative of the jury for the GESA Global EdTech Award from Tel Aviv Mindset. So I have a global view of EdTech industry, I would say.
Great, thanks a lot, Thierry. So yeah, I'm very happy this panel today because we have Tulia, who's a teacher, Leticia, who's a researcher, we have Thierry, who's representing the EdTech industry as a CEO, and we have also Dionys, who's representing more the B2B education. So a very complete panel. And maybe also we'll ask Adina to introduce herself. She's the coordinator of the Impact EdTech project, and she will also be selecting and asking your questions to our panelists.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but yes, my name is Adina Nistor. I work for European Schoolnet, the coordinator of Impact EdTech. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And I'll also come back to you at the end of this webinar and with your questions to the panelists.
Great, thank you so much, Adina. So I wanted to start maybe with it as an education expert and a researcher. I would like to ask you, what are the main challenges that you have identified since this crisis, and since you've seen that teachers and schools had to move to 100% online, and how did you deal with?
Yes, first of all, in Italy, lockdown started in March, so schools closed in March, in some regions in the north even earlier, in so maybe 20th of February, so long time. And as Indire, I mean, with my institute, we soon activated a wide range of initiatives in order to support remote teaching, to help our teachers with distance teaching. So we organized different webinars run by teachers or head teachers or experts to tell their stories, the way they tried to, they were coping with this new situation. So we aimed at creating a sort of community of practice, sharing ideas and of course solutions both on technological side and of course a disciplinary and a methodological side. Of course, it was unprecedented for everybody. And I would like to mention Streicher in his report, the director at OECD, where he said that digital learning has risen from a nice to have extracurricular facility to become the lifeline for education. Of course, it was unprecedented. So before that time, we had a lot of teachers who were expert, who were skillful in technologies, but not all, of course. And the role of technologies, of course, was completely different, because in the past it used to be something like, yes, as Streicher said, a sort of nice to have extracurricular facility sometimes. So maybe an add-on, or in some cases it was an integrated part of the teaching pathway, but not for the teachers. So it was really a real challenge for our teachers and teachers. And so the first, one of the biggest, let's say, findings was that it was not possible to replicate the traditional, I mean, the face-to-face model of schooling. So it was not possible to have students stay long hours in front of a screen for live lessons, the same length of classroom lesson. same thing for the entire planning, the entire teaching and learning pathway. So there was evident, it was evident that, self-evident that the need to reshape and to rethink, of course, the whole teaching and learning pathway. So, for example, working on core topics, so not the entire, curriculum that was planned at the beginning of the school year, but redesigning the subjects and maybe working through cross-curricular projects, project-based learning, or maybe transversal activities, working in cooperation, so among different teachers, and of course assessment as well. It was soon evident that assessment was not possible to assess students in the same way as in the face-to-face model. But so the idea was to focus mainly on formative assessment, so how to trace and especially skills, competencies, and so through, for example, portfolios, and also enhancing the students' participation and engagement in the live activities, and also, of course, tools, books and pens had to be replaced with digital tools. So it was, of course, all this a real great challenge. And our teachers during the webinars told us very moving stories about, especially at the beginning, the need that they have to keep the human touch with the students. So what is called the warm cognition, the social emotional learning. So this affective side that was, especially at the beginning, the important aim to keep this human contact, this touch with the students, and have this relation, this teaching, but also human relationship go on. So this was one of the first, especially moving to listen to our teachers' stories.
Great. Thank you, Leticia. It's very interesting. So I don't know if Tulia, as a teacher, had the same experience. So Leticia mentioned redesigning kind of the curricula and going to project-based learning and cooperation between teachers, because of course, like, it's impossible to have the same kind of face-to-face as online. So Tulia, as a teacher, can you tell us had the same kind of experience?
Okay, so I have to say, first of all, that I work in a school that is in the north, 2 schools in the north of Italy. So we started the lockdown at the very beginning, so since February 21st. And as we were used to work with technologies, we didn't have problems in connecting. We were also lucky because all our students were able to connect, and we provided and they had a device to do it. But the problem, so all my colleagues with whom I shared, we agreed that the work for a teacher was more than double, because we had to rethink the way of teaching. I teach scientific matters, scientific subjects, and first of all, I felt the lack of the laboratory. So we had to invent virtual activity, virtual labs, remote labs, online interactive work, simulations. Also, we had to try to find all the ways to engage students. So it was impossible to just have a lecture, a frontal, something very frontal, but we had often to ask the students to interact. So to reduce anyway the time that we had a direct speech with them, and we had to give them to use different kind of methodologies, like sometimes flipping the lesson, or giving them some videos and then having brainstorming, or also organizing some video conferences to allow them working in groups and interacting with them. Also, we had to think to make them working on different tasks at home. So not everything was online. The time online was the time in which we could check how it was working. Of course, I can say that I am lucky and I have a very good condition. Not all the schools are the same in Italy, but I think also abroad. Anyway, what we are really worried about is that it's not possible to reach everyone if they are not engaged. So we have always to think how to engage them, engage the students.
Okay, thanks a lot. So what you were talking about of having teachers study at home on videos and then have more interactive sessions with the teacher is the flipped classroom, I think. And it's interesting because the flipped classroom has been something which has been talked about and tried to be implemented for years already, but it's interesting that thanks to this full 100% remote, it's finally happening more quickly, and I think it's interesting for teachers to see how it can work and how they can continue with some maybe of those methods, including on the face-to-face when the classroom, when it's possible to go to the classroom. I wanted to ask Ionis because he's also teaching, but more in a B2B way, so not teaching in schools, but teaching professionals in companies. Which he used to do face-to-face. I would like to know how did you deal with this new 100% online as Dionys?
Yeah, sure. Well, basically one of the starting points was that maybe in our very personal experience, I think that maybe from the very beginning or at the very beginning, we were not, let's say, humble enough, because we were supposed to be the educational institution, right? So if we have to move the content and we have to move the classes to an online platform, we are the ones setting everything up. We know the teachers, we have the technology, we have the resources. So we're supposed to have a very clear idea of what needs to be done, right? Apparently. But we found out that was not the way, that was not the right attitude from our side. So one of the very first things that we found out is that in this level, especially in companies and management committees with senior adults, it's important not to forget that education is a very human, personal experience. So instead of telling our students and companies what needed to be done, of course we did it, but we opened that as an open discussion. So instead of instructing and guiding and deciding as ISTE whatever needed to be done, we open our discussion very transparent, very flat, together with the HR teams from the organizations and also with the students, in order to fine-tune which was the best scenario, which were the best tools, which were the best resources that we could implement, because we maybe have many, but we decided to go for those ones that could make our students feel much more comfortable. So this co-creating or co-working experience together with the customers and together with the students was one of the most outstanding learnings from that experience. And one of the things that we also find out very fast is that the core of the experience still was related with this human touch, which is similar to what Leticia was mentioning before. This human presence. So we decided to implement an online role that did not exist before in any of our sessions, that we decided to call online dynamizer. So the online dynamizer was a person, a new role was permanent there before the session, let's say 15 minutes before I had the session, just to welcome everyone. The first question was an emotional check-in, is how are you today? How are you feeling? How's your family? How are you in terms of mood? How ready you are? How worried you are today? Just in order to make sure that everyone was in the same line, but from the emotional perspective. And of course, this person was helping the teacher with any kind of technological assistance if necessary. But we found out that this role was gluing the whole experience and had a tremendous positive impact on the online experience compared with simply the figure or the role of a teacher and the students. So this human touch, the different roles, because this role was needed to be invented. We didn't have it before. But thanks to this co-working experience with the customers, we found out they helped us to define what was best for them in order to maximize the learning experience. And we're very happy with the results so far.
Great, thanks a lot, Dionys. It's very interesting that from moving 100% online, you actually involved more human interaction, try to involve more human interaction first by asking your learners what do they need and what they think, and also by having this online dynamizer. I think that's very interesting. And I wanted to move to Thierry, because you're CEO of an EdTech company. So we've talked about the difficulty to engage learners when it's online. So as a solution provider and also as an EdTech expert, how do you think EdTech solution can help teachers in engaging their learners?
So in a way, EdTech have to be modest. There are tools to help teachers in this to answer this question, and we are behind, and we try to be efficient on that. So EdTech experience for this COVID period will reflect what have been said by Leticia and Tulia mainly, and I would say that we have kind of three phases in this remote time for schools. The first phases was the phases where teachers were trying to replicate what was done in real world. So they use all the tools that we are just using just now all together. So they go to video conferencing. We had those Zooms, those Teams, even some of those tools that was funny that came from the students, the teenager practices. So we had in France Discord, which is a gaming platform where the gamer are chatting, and we have seen a lot of teachers being on Discord for this kind of. So, but this is exhausting. And if you have 30 kids, you don't want to lose them. If you want to do this kind of thing all day long, so it lasts 1 week. This kind of using tools to replicate the past was not the good solution, I would say, even if for some times it could be transformed. The second phase was more back to the digital world before, I would say, this video conferencing. So we have spoken about the lecture. So you have a lot of YouTube video. We have even some television programs that have been done on education back to the 70s, or I don't know back to when. So we have some push of information, and we have also those numerous content that publishers have done, the digital textbook, a lot of content. So teachers try to use those content, and finally we have those very traditional things that are mails. Teachers sending mails with PDF for the student, asking the students to do the homework and send it back. And then happens what Tulia described as a kind of overload of work to do that, to correct that. And even we have some backlash from parent association, because suddenly the parents have to do this work, because of course the homework, they are part of that. So this workload was kind of very noisy, and everybody say, oh, how can we do with that? And I would say we are in the third phase. How can we do, to answer the question you ask, and how can we do better on that? One major part there, it's all the interactive, the kind of activities that can be done by the kids on their own, because we still need to learn the basic knowledge. We still need to learn the curriculum, even if we have to engage, and the human touch is key, as everybody agree, but we still need to do some maths. And listening to math lesson is not enough. So those interactive tools, those startups that are not the global tool or the digital books, but the exercise are increasing. So personalized learning, adaptive learning, those kind of possibility to have every kid to work at its own path, and to have for the teacher a kind of dashboard or something that reflects what kids is blocked, where they are blocked, and how you don't lose your kids. When you have 20, it's okay. We had a project in Egypt, there are 80 for a classroom. So if you want not to lose those kids, to have those kind of tools and to see where they are going, that is increasing. The demand there is increasing. It's going more and more investment on the EdTech part that is taking attention for investors. So this is, I can say, the future of what we are seeing now. That's a bit of my comment.
Great, Leticia. This is quite interesting because my next question was about personalized learning. So, because we have seen a lot of difficulties in actually spotting students or learners' difficulties because we don't interact with them on a daily basis. So what you were saying about having a dashboard, seeing the student progress, that where EdTech can actually in that. And I wanted to ask Leticia, so as an education expert, how do you think this can be tackled? So having remote learning and still being able to find out if it's extra support and have more learning that personalized.
Yeah, so the one of the challenges, of course, was to since the beginning to have the students engaged, and asking them to switch on their webcam was not enough to see that they were there and they were paying attention, because it was not enough. So the challenge was to just organize the learning environment. The learning environment that we normally said that that it's the third teacher. We call it a third teacher. Now, it was even more evident that it was so important to plan and organize the learning environment. So with the right balance between synchronous activities, asynchronous activities, so tasks and maybe homework, trying to avoid overload. So this sort of digital wisdom, what Prensky calls the digital wisdom, which is the this right balance, this combination of different tools, not too many, but just the proper adequate for that particular learning aims, for that particular maybe polls, interactive polls, or some other sort of sharing, shared boards where students could maybe post their comments and interact. So just feel them, let them be active and interactive. And another important thing that soon became, crucial in remote teaching, as far as we could collect from our teachers' webinars, the importance of the feedback, because as John Hattie, the famous scholar, Australian scholar, said, feedback is one of the factors with the highest impact on deep learning. And in particular, that happens in general, of course, in education in general, but in particular during this remote teaching, feedback became really, really important, because students needed to be constantly monitored, and so through different forms of feedback that could be, of course, from the teachers, but also from the other from the peers, could be a visual feedback, textual, or maybe audio, but trying to also to match the different, of course, the multiple intelligences. There are different learning styles, and but always trying to personalize tasks and activities, but giving them a constant feedback so that they could be sure to be on the right way.
Leticia, and have the same experience. So how would you notice if a student is kind of lost, and how would you implement more personalized learning?
So we tried to do many things. Of course, something more classical, giving homeworks, also personalized homeworks or personalized tasks. But what we tried was also to make them be more active. Usually, students are not happy to sit not only behind the screen, but sitting and just listening. So we tried, for instance, working with robots. We were used when at school working with some practical tools, and so we invented, for instance, some activities in which we had just one robot, but the students could work in teams on some tasks, and then send the program through the web to the one who had the robot. In this case, for instance, we felt the lack of some simulators because it was completely different. Usually at school, every time you have like a digital tool or some learning tools, you can touch it, you can see the effects of what you have thought, but if you are working online, you are not able to do this. So also it's different when you are behind the camera. But we saw that with the students, especially with those students that are not, I cannot say that with special needs, but with some difficulties, it's very important to have some tools in which they can also work practically. So we tried also to think to different ways of working that had to be different from classical homework, because students at least were quite bored to just write and listen and watch. So we had to think to different things. Generally, anyway, we had to alternate different kind of activities.
Okay, thanks a lot. So much for the engagement of learners as well as how to personalize learning. I think that you all had to be quite creative and using your imagination and illusion. So that's really interesting. And I saw that there was a question about students with special needs. So that was actually the next topic we call. But I would like to talk about the digital divide in general. So not only students with special needs, but all kind of issues that can prevent some people from accessing EdTech. And I wanted to ask Dionys first, because he has experience with teaching adults and sometimes CEOs that are overfilled, that are not so used as young people as using technologies. So I wanted to know his experience about this.
Yeah, well, basically one of the first things that we have to do whenever we try to define the learning scenario curriculum for this kind of target or management committees is, of course, we have to be very subtle. And so one of the first things that we used to do is we conduct a survey, or let's say a pre-assessment, just in order to define and determine which are the level of knowledge that this audience has. And based on that, we have to define and work together with the right path and with the right scenario. So most of the times we assume that that's not going to be a problem. But one of the things that we found out right out of the lockdown, that in our case in Spain was starting in March the 14th, is that, for example, a very top working class, as CEOs, we started to face some very important issues because as CEOs or as members of our management committee, we quickly found out that some of them, they didn't know how to connect to the VPN, for example, or what did they need to do in order to, let's say, turn the firewall off. So using a public Wi-Fi like the one they have at home, a domestic Wi-Fi, they can access to the private or to the remote network. So they can access to the files, or they can access to the email services. In some of the cases, we know that some of the companies we were working for, they have to authorize part of the hotline team members or assistant team members in order to provide this kind of service and support to the management committees, because they were absolutely unable to start Hangouts or a Skype or even access to the email. So what we had to do ourselves is not only this pre-assessment that I was mentioning before, but also making sure that we had not only support from the educational perspective, from the program itself, but also technical support to make sure that they were connected. And as you can imagine, it's not the same talking to a young kid or to someone who is below 30 or with his or her first job, that talking to someone who's member or even president or even country manager of a top corporation, just to let him or her know that he or she has no clue on about how to make his or her computer work, for example. So that's a big challenge that we had to face.
Thanks a lot, Dionys. And so that was about the age gap, the age divide, which is very important and to be taken into account as well. And I would like to move now to more children or students, teenagers with special needs. I think, Tulia, you had the case. Can you tell us a bit more about how you implemented remote learning with pupils with special needs?
Okay, so we were already used, but we discovered a lot of tools. So we tried to, of course, I'm thinking to special needs like dyslexia, so those needs that are quite common, so not really disabled people, because they need the help of special teacher, but all those students needed the help of some tools, like speech or like that is coming back.
Excuse me, I get you, but I think there is
maybe there is okay. So we generally working with the whole class online, we had to think to some tools that could be used from everyone. So everything that is good for students with special needs are very good also for the others. So we discovered the tools and platforms or different ways of working, but also thinking to different ages of students. We really had to think that the help of families, of parents, were very important, because especially for younger or for really students, weak students, the help of an adult being nearby was very important. So for a teacher, it was important to think also that everything that we think is quite easy when we are in the class, it's not as easy when you don't have the possibility to reach everyone. It's something related also to the experience of not only of students but also of adults. So in some families it was easy to give help, and also there was the possibility, especially during the lockdown, in which all the parents were at home. It was more difficult after the first phase, when students were alone, and they needed to be autonomous in everything. So a lot of help with the tools. For instance, students learned how to slow down a video if it's in a foreign language, or how to use the text-to-speech also for not only for taking part to a lesson, but also for their personal use, or some tools, not only those tools, but also some gaming tools that could engage students to reach the goal with different ways. Like, for instance, we used a lot Minecraft or other kind of tools, quite easy for everyone. And in this way, we could also join those students that usually are not very good in normal activities.
All right. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
It's interesting to see that for some cases, the tools that
Sorry, Lucy, but we missed the
for
better if you repeat, because the voice was going.
Special needs are actually good for the class. So that's really interesting. So I see we're kind of running out of time. If we want to leave time for questions from the public as well, but I wanted maybe to ask Thierry if he could give maybe one or two examples of tech solutions that.
Yeah. So you hear me? It's okay.
Can you hear better now?
Yeah. So regarding solution for special needs, first I would say.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. What you have said, it's surprisingly, it was an increase for inclusion. In a way, special needs kids were the ones that have laptop, even if in remote area. So in numerous cases, they had to use this kind of technology, and they were among the other using the technology. So that was the first inclusion effect of that. That is a good benefit. I will give just 3 examples. We have some solutions that are increasing when for sure we use technology. 2 companies, Learn and Joy or Caligo, it's script and go. Caligo, it's tools that help to recognize the handwriting and detect kind of dyslexia on the handwriting on the tablets. So those data can bring back more accurately what is the special needs of these kids. So those kind of tools that will collect some data will increase the remediation based on what these kids is needing and not that one. Another example following this, it's a study. We are part of this Educate incubator in UCL London. And there was a study in London saying that in UK, I would say, that 30% of the dyslexia detected were in fact a vision problem. So with this kind of tools and data, you can more accurately detect what is really the problem. Is it a lesson you have missed, or is it dyscalculia? And this kind of capacity with this amount of data that we have in the remote learning will bring us to this evidence-based approach that Leticia mentioned with John Hattie and this research that are working on the data and how we can more accurately identify what is needed for every kid. And so, for speaking of that EvidenceB, what we do, we have done some algorithm with INRIA, it's a big research center. And the algorithm name is multi-arm bandit. And this algorithm can detect when a kid it needs still some basic exercise on a lesson. So it can help the differentiation. What if it's a nightmare for the teacher to be aware of where every kid is on the, so it's not a special needs specifically, but it's a dropout for someone, and it's a big impact for education. 11% of the students in Europe are dropout kids, so that's not exactly special needs, but it's a whole subject that we can improve with this data and evidence-based approach that this big amount of usage that we have all over the world suddenly bring to our company, research, and everyone.
And if I can add something, Thierry, on what you mentioned, it was very nice for us as teachers to have the opportunities during this period in which we experienced the online learning, to have a lot of resources and tools from companies, because we had the opportunities to try things that we have never thought about, and that maybe from now on we will include in our teaching. It was really a great opportunity.
Thanks a lot.
So that's great. I think Lucy is experiencing some technical issues, but we're just in time actually for taking the questions from the audience. So I would like us to continue on the topic of inclusion. So one question is from Giulia Bombi, who's a special needs teacher in Northeast Italy. She says she teaches in an upper secondary school to disabled children. And she thinks that online education is missing a very important factor for disabled students' education, which is the physical impact and nearness, which is fundamental with these students. And she's asking the panel, how do you as specialists think that this issue can be overcome? So maybe Leticia, can you attempt an answer for Tulia? Leticia, I think you are muted.
Okay, while Leticia is trying to
now, yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. So yes, of course, this is a very important topic, and I would like to mention the document by UNESCO, Learning for All, which is just specific on this topic. So there are specific guidelines on the inclusion of learners with disability in open distance and distance learning. So it's just providing instructions and suggestions on how to use tools in open resources, open educational resources, and all this treasure that we have online for all, of course, but with particular attention to students with disabilities. And one aspect that I would, one teaching model that is also mentioned in the document is the universal design for learning, which is really an effective way to design learning through different steps. So starting from prerequisites and then implementing the activities and monitoring all the students' progress in different ways through personalized learning and so on. So this is, I think, very useful, suggestions on this issue, and also the what Tulia was mentioning about the involvement of families, parents and families, is a real discovery. One of the main findings we can say from this period, with particular, attention to the learners with disabilities, with special needs, and also there's a sort of new learning contract, new with the families. So school is really has really entered our students' homes, and so and the opposite. So it's just this inside and outside school that we always encourage. For the first time now, it was real. It came into light, and also from the so connected with all the different, companies and different educational institutions providing materials and support to teachers and students, there was this important new thing. So also supporting parents, families. So there was a sort of new profile for, and it was something unprecedented. A lot of websites, and when I think about Khan Academy or TED Ed, or also different providers, and creating a new profile for parents, for families, and so especially for for younger learners, but also learners with special needs. It was a very effective way to let them feel guided, not alone. So with, of course, with the help of their parents, with their family, it was a really helpful, I think, a really great support.
Okay, yeah, that's a very important aspect, family involvement. Tulia, you mentioned it already in your presentation.
There is also a side from students that can be helpful because those tools that are common used can be used by mates to give help for students with special needs. Let's say, for instance, that we can ask them to study and to record something for a mate that is not able to read himself, or to just prepare some tools and then share. So I think that also in let's say peer tutoring, you can have an help. So going back to the inclusion that Thierry was mentioning before, when you give something for everyone, sometimes you have some surprises from students. They can give a big help, and they are really appreciated from those students with the need help.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that the other panelists would like to add on how to overcome the challenges of the lack of nearness, the lack of closeness between the teacher and the students in the case of special needs students? Okay, in this case, we can move to the next question, which is actually for Thierry. It's a question from Avinash from India, and he's asking if artificial intelligence can be used in a way, is there a way for artificial intelligence to be used to create student engagement in remote learning scenarios? And if there is such a way, how? What is this way?
So the question is for me, I guess. So there is a lot of discussion about artificial intelligence, and I would say artificial intelligence is quite stupid, and we don't have to expect too much about that. You have to have a narrow subject to be efficient. So it's very strong, and it will be able to answer or to participate to the answer of many of the questions. Just to do a summarize, it's not maybe specifically the question asked. The challenges with artificial intelligence, it's because it's stupid, it needs thousands or even millions of data to do something efficient. So if you just try to do chess, play chess or Go, with millions, you can start to have some game there. If you want to, on Facebook, to differentiate a truck and a cat, it's millions of data. So teachers are much more efficient than students. But if you narrow the subject, for example, what we have done with INRIA, it's how to learn addition for 6 or 7 years old kids. So it's a very narrow subject. And to detect on those narrow subjects which exercise is easy for these kids, and we can go a bit further, which one they are still struggling with, that AI can provide answer and can help. So you have to cross, I would say, the power of AI with other kind of science to have very specific subject. And in this case, we will have more and more examples of AI helping education. just to add two examples, there was two in the EdTech company, buzzing company regarding AI. One, it was a US company, Newton, that raised $100,000 and another one in China, Squirrel. And it's not, Squirrel is still a big success, but it's a B2C. It's to convince the family that it's magic. It works more when we sell people to sell product to family. When you speak with teacher, you can cheat. To know if the tool will help or not. And it's not a question of marketing. It's a question of efficiency in the class. If it's help the kids that she's struggling with and she doesn't understand why it doesn't understand, in that case, AI will help. So.
Okay, thank you, Thierry. Since we're approaching the end of the webinar, we're not going to be able to ask all the questions that we are in the chat, but just one final question from Veronica, which I think can be answered by all of the members of the panel. What do you think are the next challenges to schools reopening with regards to linking curricula, teaching strategies, and remote learning technology? So very quickly, Leticia.
Yes, what I can say is that what we are doing at also my institute as researchers, we are trying to collect all the experiences from our teachers, and well, we were launching now also just today a survey to all teachers in Italy to focus on the different aspects of remote teaching. And so what we would like to do is to collect and reflect, of course, on these experiences in order to capitalize them. So we know that, of course, it was unprecedented. It was there were so many challenges. Not everything worked well. But we think that, of course, it was a learning experience anyway. So it's worth reflecting on it, capitalizing what worked well, the main findings, that what we call the lessons learned, so that we can better reshape, rethink, and replan next school year.
Thank you, Tulia.
I think that I'm really looking forward to go back to school, to real school, taking help with what I've learned, using maybe more often technology, all the tools that we saw, starting from the video conference, maybe also for making groups and dividing classes if we need, but we were used already with homeschooling or when someone was at the hospital, but also it can be useful with the lab when you have a lab, using a lot of online data, online labs that we discovered that it's possible to open a telescope in Australia, just staying at home, and it doesn't matter if it's the lockdown or not. And also, I think that we will discriminate between all the resources that we found useful, resources and tools not only, and we will introduce in our normal teaching. But the students are really to really go to school, back to school.
Thank you, Tulia. Thierry?
Yes, I would say there is kind of two dangers. First one, it's those that are very impatient, and it's a good thing to meet the student back and to go back to the real contact. As I have said, this human touch, it's key in education. But to say, okay, we are fed up with all those digital, we stop with that. We have some people, even on Twitter, saying, okay, forget about this bad digital experience because digital could be bad. So you have this kind of people. You have the other kind of people saying, okay, it was magic, it's a new world, forget about school, go forget about school, go, it's another failure. I think what we should expect is to benefit from what we have done, what we have seen, what have been working, what have been questioning, and to get more professional, more evidence-based, having the ambitious to have education as the key asset of Europe, of every country, and so that could be my conclusion.
Thank you, Thierry. Diony?
Okay, so from my side, it's quite close to what Thierry was saying right now, because this situation in the past and during these last 3 months has been exceptional, but somehow we expect that this has become the new reality. So most of our students, they talking about going back to normal and so forth. And what we expect is to go back to reality, and reality is going to be a lot of things, but it's not going to be normal. So there's going to be no back, and there's going to be no back to normal. So we expect most of our programs to be hybrid, to be liquid. So the reason maybe in winter in Europe, fall and winter season, we will have to face an intermittent lockdown. So in case that we have to go back to digital, there's been a lot of learnings during this period that we might learn from them, and we can implement if necessary. And in the meantime, we know that the traditional face-to-face experience can be enhanced and maximized thanks to the different digital initiatives that we've been setting up. So this being ready for this intermittency and this liquid new reality is for us a top priority. And together with the fact that we also invite our students to play a very active role, letting us know how can we as an institution help them, instead of the other way around, this kind of paternalistic attitude that you as an institution have to let me know, you guys, what do I have to do. So maybe it's not going to be like this, maybe it's exceptional as well for me. So if we want to deliver the best educational experience, we maybe might need your help as a student as well.
Okay, that's a very nice thought. So with this, I would like to thank our panel for your very interesting insights this evening. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you everyone for participating, for submitting your questions. We will be publishing the recording of the webinar on the Impact EdTech website, so that's impactedtech.eu. And yes, I would like to just, before leaving, to remind everyone that there is going to be a question and answer session next Monday. Do register if you want to learn more about our open call. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.